Hi, we're here with UTC CIO Vince Campisi, and we're talking about digital transformation and how the company approaches data. So Vince, you guys recently started a digital operation to sort of herd all the data cats, so to speak. What was the rationale behind that, and how does it play into the bigger conglomerate?
Yeah, so it's great to be with you. Thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with you. And I would say maybe the backdrop of what we're trying to accomplish with our digital focus is, classically IT organizations have been asked to be, key enablers for operational productivity and how you drive efficiency in a company, which continues to be very important. But with that, we also realize in order to compete in today's world on an ongoing basis, software and analytics is a key part of how we differentiate and change the relationship we have with customers. So that's kind of the basis behind it. I think what you might be talking about is this accelerator that we've made an investment in to really build out some of the skills that we classically haven't recruited for. Data science and analytics is absolutely an important piece of that, but it also includes things like product management, user experience design, software development. So folks who live in a command line are welcome here again, at least within the digital technology organization. So that's some of what we're doing with that.
How do you go about recruiting that talent?
Well, part of this was we were really focused on how do we pick a market that has, a really kind of deep base of folks who have the types of skills that we're talking about. And we canvassed a whole bunch of places and landed in New York City because it does have a deep pool of talent. But then secondly, I mean, we're so far we've had a lot of success recruiting the type of people we aspired for because of the content that we have and what we do. And so, there's not a lot of companies that sort of approach this that say, hey, we're going to use data and analytics to fix machines and repair an aircraft or help, improve revenue passenger miles for an airline. And so a lot of people who are in this space are either in financial services or in maybe sort of ad tech. And so we bring forth a whole bunch of challenges and opportunities that I think people are inspired by and want to be a part of.
So would you say that UTC is basically becoming a software developer?
I would say we are an industrial company and our roots are sort of building kind of amazing technology that defy the laws of physics. But we also recognize the fact that digital can be such an important vehicle on how we accelerate the company and how we accelerate the impact it can have on the world. So I'd say one of the things that you'll find is our strategy is very focused and we sort of know what we're good at and we want to use this to make us better at it. But we're not over rotating to sort of use it as like redefining ourselves as like a chic new sort of software company. It's really sticking to our knitting and our industrial roots and using data and analytics to make us even better at the things that have made this company successful.
So UTC, you have Otis for elevators, you have aerospace, you make engines, you do a lot of different things. Going forward, is the data thrown off from those assets as important as the actual assets you sell?
We certainly see the potential that it can have and the value that it can create for customers. And so all those assets you mentioned, whether it be an elevator, a HVAC unit, or a big chiller in like a large commercial campus, when you look at our aerospace divisions, we have a lot of critical systems on an airframe, including the engines through Pratt Whitney. And so there's a lot we can do with that information to improve. What I like to say is we help our customers with data analytics can help them pump more iron, right? We sell a lot of big iron for a living. And so if you're pumping iron, how do you get more reps, more reliability, more efficiency, better performance, or improve safety or sustainability? Data and analytics can help our customers get more out of those assets, sweat them harder, and make them generate more revenue. And so that's really where Internet of Things and data and analytics play an important role to how we compete going forward and how we create new sources of value for our customers.
How do you compose a data analytics stack? What do you look for? What do you have to do internally for your data? And then how do you choose partners and platforms?
Yeah, I'd say for us, the way we kind of look at the landscape is one, having a data governance structure on sort of, how we think about it in a variety of senses. What's the right platform architecture in order to be able to ingest massive amounts of information, store it effectively, and reason over it. And then sort of where does data engineering and ultimately data science sorts of tooling and talent, quite frankly, where does that all fit together? That's what we're trying to continue to evolve and build our capabilities around.
How do you see yourself ultimately using artificial intelligence and machine learning? And, is there one magic black box, or do you see yourself knitting together a bunch of things?
Well, maybe I'll talk about sort of the use cases that sort of drive it, if that would help set some context. Yeah. So there's four, we have a whole bunch of, it's a target-rich environment. We have lots of opportunities, but I'd say there's four where we have a lot of energy right now. What you'll hear is like smart factory, and more broadly, you could think industry 4.0, service transformation. So with 2 million elevators or tens of thousands of engines out in the world, how do we change and rethink how we do maintenance, repair, and overhaul or service those assets? Connected products, how do we actually start to help get more uptime and availability? And then ultimately, how do we transform the customer experience in new digital interaction models? Those are four patterns that have translatability across all of United Technologies. And so maybe two examples I'd give you is one, artificial intelligence in the form of how do we optimize our supply chain? And so this is really looking at, an example might be, when we're going to manufacture something, there's sometimes either a gap in the amount of parts we have available or other sorts of things. And so we're now using data analytics and machine learning to actually flatten out the data and understand what is the data telling us. And what we find is it doesn't always match with sort of what we thought the problems would be. And so we find sort of the role of a buyer or something that we hadn't been thinking was so significant. Machine learning is enabling us to kind of reason over the information and identify opportunities to improve key processes a lot faster. An alternative scenario would be where we have maybe a mechanic who's servicing an install base of elevators. How can we use condition-based maintenance to understand the health and condition of those elevators, as well as how do you optimize the route of their day so that they're addressing the most important priorities first? And when they show up, they know what to expect and what condition the asset's in and what parts or activities might be required to fulfill that need for the customer. So those are maybe one internal example on how we use it inside to make ourselves more efficient, as well as an external on how this translates into better service for our customers.
What's the role of the business leader, and how do they interface with, what will ultimately be your developers, your data science folks? I guess how does it knit together from a leadership perspective?
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, as we enable new sources of revenue and new opportunities, that lives resident in our P&L structure. And then I would say, as we work on critical opportunities, those business partners are an essential part of the team, and they operate as the product owner, if you will. And then we're moving to a flat out sort of agile Scrum model where there's a kind of an intact team that's a 8 to 12 person pod who is chartered to go figure out how do you deliver that outcome and how do you run it in sprint cycles that launch sort of V1, 2, and 3 sort of versions of the product. And that product owner is an integral part of that team and a really kind of key person in form to make sure we're doing good customer, end user research and other sorts of things.
Okay. What's the role of a cloud platform as this all unfolds?
I'd say most sort of notably in the form of like making infrastructure services available at scale and being in a position that allows us to move quickly and be innovative. And so like historically, and I think this will resonate, I'd be surprised if you haven't heard this before, but if you were to try and provision resources for a new engineering project, information technology project, or otherwise, to get the infrastructure provided to even embark on working on that scenario for like dedicated physical infrastructure, that's like a 2 to 3 month process in our kind of classic sort of workflow. If you're willing to do it on a virtual machine and we have capability on hand, that might be 6 to 8 weeks. And really where cloud comes into play is, we can have it available today. I mean, within, a couple pushes of a button. And so speed to market and agility, I mean, that's key. And that's really where it fits into enabling us to move at the speed we're trying to go.
Are you, is the strategy cloud-wise to be multi-cloud, or is it a case of, picking the one vendor and using your scale to negotiate better deals?
No, it'd be multi. I'd say, clearly, there's usually you start with one and they kind of have a bit of a head start, but we have 2 on tap right now, and we'll figure out whether a third makes sense and how we proportion across those different offerings. And some use cases are better suited for some scenarios, or a customer's sort of environment may be more better suited for somebody that they're more comfortable with. So having that flexibility is important for us, but also important for the interaction that we expect to have with customers in the future.
All the cloud vendors, especially the big three, AWS, Google, and Azure, they're all pitching machine learning platforms, their AI know-how, and they all have a different spin. How much of that, how much is their internal machine learning capability? How much does that affect your buying decision, or who do you go with?
I would say right now, we're not hitting the order of use cases that are sort of hitting the differentiating aspects. And so where the data is resident, it's more eloquent and sort of easier to deal with maybe the machine learning library that exists. But I think as we continue to move towards, we're starting to do much more in predictive analytics, and then particularly as we get into prescriptive analytics, I think those will start to drive use cases that where that innovation is starting to kind of separate, that will become much more of a characteristic as we think about things going forward. Where we sit today, it hasn't been as probably critical of a decisioning path, but I think we'll start to see that become much more of a dimension in the discussions, at least as it relates within our company and where we stand on our journey.
You mentioned prescriptive analytics. I mean, what would you recommend to enterprises what do they have to do to their data to get there?
Yeah. Well, I would say
that's where all the grunt work comes in.
Yeah. A lot, a lot of different things. For me, the key for us and where we're having the most success, the technology, figures itself out. The use cases really kind of inform that. For us, we have deep domain experts that understand all sorts of parameters and conditions about our products. And the way we engage them into the conversation and the way we figure out interaction models that take the knowledge that they have and bring some of the software skills and some of the other sort of maybe discipline skills and how we bring those together, that for me is the secret sauce. And that's where we spend a lot of the time trying to make some of this magic happen, is identifying these bright spots in the company that understand things in a way that many of us don't, and getting them sort of involved with how we go embark on rethinking the way that analytics work in our company. And then that informs, what's the technology friction that's preventing us from doing that at the speed we want and with the reusability we want. But for me, that domain expertise is so essential, and that's really a key differentiator for a company like us. Okay.
On the big data platforms, are you guys using Hadoop? Do you stitch things together? Is that, packaged Hadoop, or is that something, you have your own experts for? How does it work?
We do have Hadoop. We try and stay to kind of the, purer forms of the branch and the purer forms of the distro. We're not trying to reinvent some of the kind of the core things that have been solved for before. So that's maybe a short way to kind of hit your question on, yes, we do. And I'd say we're trying to leverage what's already available in the market. And most of our handcrafting will be much more at sort of the application, sort of, how that gets consumed and presented in order to fulfill the outcomes.
Okay. On Internet of Things, do you see that more as a internal efficiency play, or is that more like a revenue generator for you going forward?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, internally, we probably have somewhere in the order of, and you need to double check my math, but let's use round numbers to say somewhere in the order of like 300 plants around kind of the company, of which some subpopulation, yields probably like 85% of the revenue or supports 85% of the revenue. And so what we find is you'll go into a factory and people are buying new equipment, but once you connect the equipment inside of a factory, you find some pieces are not used more than 40%. And so it can be a tremendous, cash saver and output enabler by being smarter about the assets we have in a factory and how do we put them, sweat them harder, assets being sort of the physical machinery. Similarly, there's a whole bunch of things we can do that create new insights for customers in the aerospace industry and the commercial buildings industry. And, it's really, that will bring forth a whole bunch of new capabilities, new offerings that we can put in the hands of our customers to make them more productive. And then, how we monetize that and how we create value together is, that's always the kind of the next question. And that's sort of the types of things we're working on as to how we think about it outside.
As you look at IoT and big data and those things, how does it change the customer relationship? Do they become more like partners, or how do you see it changing over time?
It depends on the customer, quite frankly, and it depends if you're talking to an airline carrier. I think that depending on sort of size and scale of the airline carrier, you would maybe have a different conversation on the type of help they could need or the type of opportunities that might exist. So I think the sky's the limit. I think it's just a function of our ability to be innovative on how we manage data and how we can bring it together to unlock new insights that people haven't sort of identified before, and new relationships that people maybe didn't realize mattered before. And then what's that worth to, helping one of our respective customers use that as either to drive productivity for themselves or more yield in sort of the operations that they lead and manage. And so, for example, I mean, if you can help an airline save one, point of fuel efficiency, it's worth $2 billion, somewhere in the order of $2 billion a year for the industry. Or if you can save them somewhere in the order of like a minute off of their daily route logistics over the course of the year, that's effectively like giving them another aircraft. So anything we can do to help them with sort of quicker turns or more uptime and availability, it's big dollars.
Okay. As you look at your digital transformation journey and basically plot it out a bit, what's the timeline? Like kind of is this a 3 to 5 year thing? Is this a decade thing? I guess how should CIOs and tech leaders think about it?
For us, it's there's definitely a broader transformation sort of roadmap that we look at indicators for talent, indicators for the process change that we're making in the company. But we have it boxed into like, here's how much of that change we want to see in 18, with an eye toward like, what would entitlement look like, or what would our broader ambitions look like over a 3-year period. I tend not to go all the way out to 5, because the only thing I could tell you about a 5-year plan is that I'll be wrong, so we try and time box it to say what will be the benefits that you'll feel in year 1, but also what would progress look like over a 3-year horizon, and more importantly, like what's the investment profile over that horizon. And then we ultimately, like the ultimate measures of our success on this investment in digital and what it can mean is, and there's lots of things I would share, but the 3 that kind of at the end of the day, it's EBIT, cash, and sales, and how this ties back to those 3 things is kind of the fundamental kind of ultimate measure of success.
So the measures of success haven't gotten fancier, even though the technology has.
As little as we can sort of have it get too fancy, the more approachable it is for people to understand and the more believable it is. So we're trying to stick to the key tenets that run the company well and how this helps those happen. And technology just improves the possibilities of making those sort of impacts.
Okay. What are a few things you would what are a few takeaways you would provide to other CIOs in your situation?
For us, it's focus intent. It's really kind of, there's so much opportunity and the ambitions are huge. And like what this can mean over a long period of time is endless. But we try and stay very focused on, our three priorities are simple. It's how does this translate to redesign the experience for our customers? How does it translate into empowering our employees to work differently at a speed and pace they haven't before? And how we take friction out of their lives in order to do that? And then how does this translate into how we run, the flywheel of the company faster to help the company just sort of operate at a new level? And then I'd say secondly is we are being pretty bold in how we think about talent. And historically, the reputation of IT here was really known for three disciplines: information security, infrastructure services, and business systems. So any three-letter IT acronym: CRM, ERP, PLM, et cetera. We've broadened that to say there's four that we haven't been as known for, but we need to be, and that's product management, user experience design, software development, and data science and analytics. So it's really about redefining and being clear as to what the company should know us for, and then being really focused on what we're going to apply that against.